sure most of us have heard the phrase sophomore slump before. It refers to times when someone sets high expectations their first time doing something, only to not live up to them the second time. There are many examples of this in music. However, there are also many examples of the opposite, bands whose second albums are their best. One of those bands, Agalloch, is going to be the subject of today's video. Their second album, The Mantle, is a masterpiece of heavy metal music, despite being released during a time when the members weren't listening to much metal. I'm going to be talking about the band that made this album, and also try and dive into the songs as well as I can. Let's cut to the chase. 1997 was a productive year. Hong Kong was handed back to China. The British Labour Party won their first election in 23 years in a landslide. And Madeleine Albright became the first female U.S. Secretary of State. More importantly for our video, however, a band called Agalloch was formed in Portland, Oregon. Originally functioning as a purely studio project, they began as a duo consisting of singer-guitarist/drummer John Homme and keyboardist Shane Breyer. Before too long, they added guitarist Don Anderson and bassist Jason William Walton. As far as their style went, they played folk metal with a heavy black metal influence. For the sake of time, I'm not going to give in-depth explanations as to what either genres mean. All you need to know is that their songs combine both acoustic and distorted guitars, sung and screamed vocals, and are generally very melancholy. Think of it as like a sad walk through the woods. There's also a heavy post-rock influence with songs pretty much never following the traditional verse-chorus format, and there being frequent and extended instrumental passages. The band's name comes from the agar wood, Latin name Aquilaria agalloca. This is a type of wood that forms when the Aquilaria tree becomes infected with the P. parasitica mold. The wood, when burned, creates a very soothing smell, and its oil is sought after for use in perfume and incense. It's extremely valuable, and pure, undiluted wood and oil can be bought for as much as $100,000 per kilogram. The band released 2 demos before signing with record label The End. Their debut record, Pale Folklore, would be released in 1999. During the recording process, Shane Breyer left the band, and quotes from Homme indicate that the split was far from amicable. Pale Folklore is an album that leans more into the folk side of things, although there are definitely a lot of metallic tinges to it. Homme dominates the songwriting, as he shares sole credit for 4 of the 8 songs. My personal favorite track is the closer, The Melancholy Spirit. 2 years later, in 2001, they would release the Of Stone, Wind, and Pillar EP, which is notable for containing one of the few covers that is better than the original, Kneel to the Cross, originally by Sol Invictus. The next year, on August 13th, 2002, they would release The Mantle. Around the time writing on this album began, the 3 members of Agalloch were getting rather bored of extreme metal music. Jason William Walton said in an interview that long-running death metal and black metal bands were losing inspiration, and the newer bands weren't as interesting. Things were a little more polished. It felt like a real lull. Don Anderson would go into a little more detail, saying, "In 2001-2002, metal sucked. We still didn't have the underground recovering from the new metal thing. It felt like nothing was moving me. We started listening to post-rock and singer-songwriters like Tom Waits and Nick Cave. We got way into contemporary classical too. All this music was super dark and technique-wise had a lot of similarities to black metal, like Godspeed You Black Emperor's fast guitar parts, so we thought, why not just bring this all back in?" Personally, I like a good amount of nu metal, but I will admit that some of it kinda sucks. I also support them bringing in a lot of outside influences, especially as a Godspeed You Black Emperor fan. The album cover is a photo of the Thompson Elk, which is a statue and fountain that formerly stood in downtown Portland until it was severely damaged during the George Floyd protests, although it is being held in storage and hopefully will someday stand again. When asked why they chose this image, Anderson said, "The Thompson Elk is a very well-known statue/fountain in downtown Portland, which is a city we adore and live in. Agalloch embraces nature because we are siding with what is essentially the victim in a relationship where humankind is a disease. Humanity is inherently self-destructive. The best way to separate myself from what I see as a biologically flawed being is to embrace the very thing these individuals seem bent on destroying. I do kind of find it funny that, for an album so related to nature, the cover photo was taken when there are almost certainly cars honking and driving past. One heads up before we dive into the songs, there's a page I found online where Don Anderson goes through the track listing and discusses the influences behind each song. This was incredibly useful for this video and I'll be mentioning it repeatedly. On to the music. The album begins with the 2.5-minute instrumental, A Celebration for the Death of Man. Of the 9 songs, 4 are instrumentals, which already separates it greatly from its predecessor. This song is as good of an opener as this album could have had. It has 2 layered guitar tracks, one acoustic playing campfire chords, and one distorted, reminding you that this is still a metal album. There are also strings in the background, and what really makes this song is the timpani. It has a pounding, epic feel and it catches your attention right away. About this song, Anderson says, "We typically think of humankind as a disease on this planet. This idea is representative of our inherent self-destruction."
Lighten up, Francis.
It segues perfectly into the album's first proper song, In the Shadow of Our Pale Companion. This song is just under 15 minutes long, so bear with me here. The song begins with a calming, clean, repetitive guitar line, and before long, the rest of the instruments kick in. Once the distortion turns on, it's cathartic. There are 4 different guitar lines, 2 acoustic, 1 clean, and 1 distorted. As a bass player, I find the song rather simplistic, but I also kind of like playing it. It's very meditative. 2 minutes and 15 seconds in, we finally get our first vocals of the album. Hearing Homs screaming after so long is satisfying, but within a minute he switches to clean singing. He's able to do both extremely effectively and I love it. About halfway through, the song segues into one of the best interludes I've ever heard. The guitars go back to being soft and clean, and there's a lead guitar line that's played with a delay effect that just sounds masterful. Things finally get pumping again, and the instruments start clearly building up to something. That something is a sick guitar solo from Don Anderson. It's simple, but after everything that's happened so far in the song, it couldn't fit better. The song then repeats an earlier section, and it ends with a melancholic, clean guitar line. About this song, Anderson said, "I think this is the ideal Agalloch song, and it represents everything we stand for, musically and lyrically." At this point, in listening to the album for the first time, I thought to myself, holy shit, I'm only 2 songs in. This is followed by a 7.5-minute instrumental, Odal. It's largely centered around the same few progressions, although it switches back and forth between clean and distorted playing, which means that it stays interesting. I always enjoy a song more if I know that it's really fun to play on guitar, and this one certainly is. The song ends with a peaceful piano line that's sad, but still nice to listen to. About this song, Anderson said, "A new approach to songwriting with a definite Godspeed You Black Emperor influence. We are interested in attempting a new Agallochian vibe with this song. Don't have a ton to say about this, but it's still a killer track." Up next is I Am the Wooden Doors, and this song is absolutely banging. Whereas each of the three prior started out in a very peaceful manner, this is headbanging metal right out of the gate. There's an interesting effect where they have an acoustic track overlaid during a section of heavy riffage, and it works surprisingly well. There's also a really nice interlude where Don Anderson demonstrates his proficiency at playing lead guitar. The clean vocals kick in during the second half, and they're double-tracked to a good effect. For a metal singer, John Hamm has a surprisingly good voice. I'm impressed at his ability to switch so effortlessly between singing and screaming. Also, according to Wikipedia, this song has double bass, but for the life of me, I cannot hear it at any point. Speaking of bass, though, this is the first song on the album on which Jason William Walton has a songwriting credit. On writing songs as a bass guitarist, he said in an interview, "Of course, writing bass lines to existing guitar parts is one thing, but writing the foundation is tricky. It's very hard to listen to a line of singular notes and imagine what can come out of that." The instrumental, The Lodge, is up next. With no drums, it's just focused on acoustic guitar strumming, ambient lead guitar playing, and bass. This is the song that I think Wikipedia was talking about in terms of double bass, and it sounds really nice. I should slightly correct myself. There are no drums, but there is percussion. Percussion in the form of a deer skull. It makes a cool clicking sound that probably could have been achieved through conventional percussion, but I don't care. We need more instruments made from bones. I mentioned earlier that the acoustic guitar on this album sounds very campfire-esque, and it's true again on this track. It's simple, but it still adds tremendously to the atmosphere. If you were doing lots of dissonant and suspended chords and whatnot, it wouldn't have worked nearly as well. About this song, Anderson said, "Not my favorite song on the album. This is more of a transition piece. The Mantle is meant to be listened to with headphones on from start to finish without interruption. I think this song is best in context." The next track is the 9-minute You Were But a Ghost in My Arms. This is another song that manages to overlay clean guitar and distorted guitar in a masterful way. The main guitar lick of this song is pretty difficult to play right in my opinion, but it's satisfying once you're able to master it. Hamm's clean vocals feature heavily in the song, and they make you almost want to sing along with him. Speaking of Hamm, I think this is his best drumming work on the album. Given that he already sings and writes a majority of the music, it's easy to forget that he also lays down the big chunk of the rhythm section. He's not doing anything groundbreaking, but it still sounds great. I don't know how else to describe it, just listen to it for yourself. While I don't think this is the best song on the album, it's the one I listen to the most. I listen to a lot of music while walking on the way to campus, and this is good for that. It's as compact as a 9-minute song could be. I don't always have the mental energy for something as massive as In the Shadow of Our Pale Companion. After this comes the 11-minute instrumental The Hawthorne Passage. You might hear that and think, 11 minutes with no lyrics? How could that possibly sound good? Well, just let me explain. Jesus. The song begins with nothing but an acoustic guitar that, after some campfire chords, begins playing simple arpeggios. Somehow, they have a very rhythmic, groovy feel, and they have you nodding your head before too long. Gradually, more and more layers are added, such as a distorted lead guitar, which adds a very nice atmosphere. There's also a piano line that comes in, and while it doesn't do more than just play the same melody the acoustic guitar is playing, it's a very nice touch. Eventually, the other instruments mostly cut out, while Don Anderson plays a sick, clean guitar solo. It has a very blues-like and almost southern feel. I love it. About halfway through, the song completely changes tone. The key changes for one. It goes from a groovy, melancholic vibe to an epic one. The switch in tone is paired with a dialogue sample from the 1957 Swedish film The Seventh Seal by Ingmar Bergman.
Vem är du?
Jag är döden.
The whole second half of the song feels like a completely different one than the first, and while lesser songwriters might not be able to make that work, Agalloch certainly can. At some point, there are horns that kick in, and it's just a cherry on top. The song ends with another sample, this one from the 1968 Mexican film Fando y Lis by Alejandro Jodorowsky.
Yo moriré y
nadie se acordará de mí. Yo moriré y nadie se acordará de mí, de mí.
Sí, Liz, yo me acordaré de ti. E iré a verte al cementerio con una flor y un perro, y en tu funeral cantaré en voz baja, qué bonito es un entierro.
These samples make sense since Agalloch have said that they're heavily inspired by cinema as well as music, and specifically have cited Bergman and Jodorowsky as influences in an interview. About the song, Anderson said, "This is a complex song because we were trying to make some bold steps while also attempting to convey the sensations of driving late at night in Portland. The Mantle has a strong city vibe, and this song captures that well, I think. Our points of departure were Pink Floyd, Nick Cave, and Mono. The samples of Cars were taken from underneath one of Portland's mighty bridges. I also tried to play a blues guitar solo. I think it went okay." This is the last instrumental on the album, and that's probably for the best, because there's no topping this one. And The Great Cold Death of the Earth is the next song. This one starts on a great note with some acoustic guitar and upright bass. Jason William Walton made a good choice of instrument on this one. Haum's vocals, both clean and screamed, make you want to close your eyes and nod your head. Anderson's clean lead guitar playing adds a classical touch that really makes the song pop. A little over halfway through, we get a touch of almost tribal sounding drums, and they sound great. Probably the coolest part of the song is right at the end when the motif from A Celebration from the Death of Man is played. It's a nice callback to the beginning. Also, while this album has no title track, the lyrics to this one name drop the album title, and it's a cool thing to notice. About this song, Anderson said, "Some diseases are irreversible." Okay then. Finally, the album closes with a desolation song. No, that's not a description, that's what the song is literally titled. This is by far the least metal and most folk song here. It's centered around acoustic guitar playing paired with harmonica. Haum's whispered vocals are mournful, and there's a beautiful line played on what sounds like a mandolin. The song concludes with a pretty guitar line, one final Deer Skull hit, and that's the album for you. As nice as big climactic album conclusions can be, this song works perfectly, and I can't imagine a better way to close the album. This is the only song on the album where John Haum has no contributions, writing-wise, with it being written entirely by Anderson. On that subject, about this song, he said, "When all hope is lost and you have nowhere to go," this song was written as an accompaniment for people to drink themselves to death. Shortly after this album's release, Agalloch decided the time was right to start playing live shows. They enlisted the help of drummer Chris Green and embarked on a touring cycle for the album. During these shows, they discovered that the way they recorded many of their songs made them quite difficult to play live, namely their decision to often have more than two guitar lines playing at once. One example of this is In the Shadow of Their Pale Companion. Oftentimes when played live, they've had to completely change the interlude section of the song so that it's entirely distorted and has screamed vocals instead of the clean ones that make the album version so good. Luckily, they do occasionally play it the way it was originally recorded, and thus order is restored to the world. As a result, their follow-up, 2006's Ashes Against the Grain, was a much more stripped-down release. If you view The Mantle as Agalloch's defining sound, then Pale Folklore is their folkier side, and Ashes is their metallic side. John Haum apparently thought the production of the album was too polished. In a 2013 interview, he said that the album was, in his opinion, the worst in their discography. By 2021, though, he seemed to have chilled out a bit, saying that the production fit the songs decently. Honestly, I love this album. It's not as vast as The Mantle, but it's still a headbanging good time. The next two albums, Marrow of the Spirit and The Serpent and the Sphere, were released in 2010 and 2014, respectively. Honestly, while I don't dig these albums as much as I dig their first three, they're still really great and really worth listening to. They've also released multiple EPs that I haven't mentioned on account of this video being long enough as it is. Agalloch broke up in 2016. I won't go into too much of it here since this isn't a drama channel, but from what I've read, it seemed to be on somewhat acrimonious terms. In the years following, Hom formed the trio Pillorian, while the rest of the band formed the group Chorada. Anderson would also return to Sculptured, a group he had formed way back before Agalloch, and he would also take up a day job as a college professor. Oh, I forgot to mention that he has a PhD. I would be doing him a disservice if I didn't mention that at some point in this video. In 2023, the members of Agalloch repaired their broken friendship and reunited for a series of reunion shows. No word on whether they'll make any more albums, but if they don't, then their discography still stands as a great one. Now that I've done a fair amount of talking, I want you to do a fair amount of listening. Go to Spotify, Apple Music, or wherever you get your tunes, and listen to The Mantle from start to finish in one go. If you like it, then great, you have more music to add to your rotation. If not, hey, at least you tried something new. If you're still watching by now, I just want to say thank you so much for giving me your time. If you like what you saw, be sure to like and hit subscribe. I upload these videos whenever I can. I always have a ton of fun making them. Hopefully you have as much fun watching them. If you have an idea of a topic you want me to cover, leave it down in the comments. Who knows, maybe I'll get to it. I'm RobbieJ2734. I will see you when I see you next.